So, did we all enjoy the Ryan Tubridy show? His appearance at the Public Accounts and Oireachtas committees was covered far and wide, and even broke records for the numbers tuning in to Oireachtas TV to see it all unfold. And no one was happier about that than Minister for Homelessness, Darragh O'Brien. In what was surely a mere coincidence, Minister O'Brien held a Housing for All press conference to let us all know just how badly the government are failing on housing. He came armed with excuses. He had no figures for how many social or affordable housing units have been built in Q2, with the excuse being that he hadn't verified the figures and didn't want to get it wrong. Sure, that's the reason. It's definitely not that they've missed their already low targets, right? No. It's just that the figures are unverified. He went on to explain a bit further about the delay to the scheme whereby tenants are given first refusal on the rental property they live in when their landlord issues an eviction notice because they want to sell up. A measure that should have been in place before the eviction ban was lifted, which was promised to be up and running before the summer recess, has now been delayed to September at the earliest. And the reason for this delay? He wants to make sure whatever measures brought forward would not make the sale of a home more difficult. We can always count on this government to look after the landlords. So a whole load of nothing from this press conference. Good thing it was happening at the same time that Ryan Tubridy was telling us all how it was all RTE's fault and that he and Noel Kelly were merely acting under instructions from RTE. A great little distraction to hide Darragh O'Brien's failures. And he would have got away with it too if it hadn't been for pesky Leo Varadkar doing and saying Leo Varadkar things. So what did he say this time? Well, he claimed that the government will measure the success of their housing policies on things they can control, which is fair enough, except he then proceeded to mention things that they are failing on. But anyway, he then went on to say they won't be judging their success on things they can't control that contribute to the homeless figures, like how lots of people in emergency accommodation in his constituency have refused multiple offers of housing. Now let me just say that again so that it's clear. Leo Varadkar believes that one of the factors contributing to the ever-rising homeless figures in Ireland is homeless people in emergency accommodation refusing multiple offers of social housing. So homeless people are to blame for homeless figures. I mean, you just couldn't make this shit up. For posterity's sake, here's the proof of what he said.
Even within homelessness, and I work with a lot of people who are in emergency accommodation in my constituency. There are lots of people who are in emergency accommodation and have refused multiple offers of social housing. You know, it's a much more complicated picture than people would like to make it out to be.
But it didn't stop there. Later that same day in Dáil Éireann, he reiterated those comments when answering Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett on homeless issues. Have a look.
I've come across plenty of cases of people who are there for prolonged periods of time, like 3 years, like 4 years, just like you, but there's often a more complicated story behind it. And I don't know in your case, but there'll be plenty of cases now in my constituency where people who are in emergency accommodation for 2 years and 3 years have turned down multiple offers of accommodation. That might not be the case in your case, but it is the case, and we should factor that into our statistics as well, because it's not the case that all those 12,000 people have not been offered permanent accommodation. Very many have.
Now I'll get on to why these comments are so deplorable in a moment, but first I have to draw attention to the fact that when Sinn Féin's Pearse Doherty called him up on these comments the following day, he flat out denied it and claimed he was misquoted.
Taoiseach, yesterday twice you made remarks that would cause real hurt and anger for those that are caught up in the housing crisis. First at a government housing press conference, and then later here on the floor of the Dáil, where you stated, and I quote, "Very many people in emergency accommodation have refused offers of permanent housing."
Deputy, I've just checked, and first of all, you've misquoted me, and secondly, you've misrepresented me. So I've never sought to blame anyone for the housing crisis or for homelessness. Anyone. Not the people who experience it, nor the people who try to help them, whether it's government or local authorities or NGOs or anyone else. You've misquoted me and you've misrepresented me, and that's the wrong type. That's bad politics as far as I'm concerned.
Am I living in bizarro world? He factually did say it, and more for fuck's sake.
Deputy, I've just checked, and first of all, you've misquoted me, because it's not the case that all those 12,000 people have not been offered permanent accommodation. Very many have, and very many have. You've misquoted me. There are lots of people. You've misquoted me. Plenty of cases of you've misquoted me. And have refused multiple offers. You've misquoted me. And very many have. And very many have. And very many have. You've misquoted me. If it would help, and if it would help to contain the deputy and his outburst, I'm happy to rephrase the term "plenty" to some. Right. Thank you.
And yet, he denies this. So even without talking about how unbelievable those comments are, it is genuinely disgraceful that the leader of our country thinks he can just flat out lie about things he has said on camera. Leo the liar strikes again. It's a fairly repugnant trait for a politician to be able to do the mental gymnastics that Leo Varadkar can do with ease, to lie to the entire country. I genuinely wish that when a member of the opposition calls him out for something he has said, that in the future they bring printed proof of it so that they can quote it back to him, because this isn't the first time he's claimed to have been misquoted when he wasn't. It's quite frankly ridiculous at this stage that he can just say what he likes with impunity. But worse than the lying is what he actually said. He is blaming those in emergency accommodation for not accepting offers of social housing and for prolonging their stay in emergency accommodation, thus making the government look bad. Yeah, no, that's not how any of this works. But since there appears to be some confusion, let me explain. If someone refuses an offer of social housing, the same property is then offered to the next on the list. If they too refuse, it's offered again to the next on the list, and on it goes until someone accepts. The property doesn't disappear if one person refuses it, and the same number of people are taken off the homeless register regardless once the property has been filled. This isn't rocket science. If one person doesn't take the home, someone else will. And if a particular property is constantly being refused, then the problem lies with the property and not those refusing it. But Leo Varadkar knows this, and he doesn't care, because once again he has let the mask slip and shown us who he truly is and what he truly thinks of those worse off than himself. And as a result, he has attempted to divide and sow discourse between the various socio-economic groups. That is not good leadership. Leaders are meant to lead everyone and bring them together, not pit them against each other, which is what Leo Varadkar always tries to do. It's welfare cheats cheat us all over again. Gaslighting nonsense from someone who should know better. Well, I say that, but let's be real here. He knows exactly what he's doing, and the why is obvious. Firstly, he is playing to his shrinking core voter base, but secondly, and more insidiously, he is seeking to shift the blame for the housing crisis onto those worst affected by it. He wants people thinking that the homeless are being greedy by wanting the perfect house in the perfect location, while the rest of the population slaves away for substandard housing in areas that are far from their ideal location in the ever-expanding commuter belt. Now, he knows this is nonsense. He knows that people can't just repeatedly refuse offers of accommodation, even though he came out and said he has no plans to cap the number of refusals. What absolute nonsense. If you refuse an offer and you have a good reason, you keep your place on the list. If, however, the local authority thinks that you do not have a good reason for refusing the offer, it may reduce your priority on the list. If you refuse more than one reasonable offer in any 12-month period, you will be suspended from the list for 12 months. So why would anyone take that risk unless the offer was genuinely unsuitable? Okay, sure, I'd wager some will chance their arm and give spurious reasonings for refusals, but the majority? No, I don't buy that for 1 second. I mean, if in some alternate reality my husband and I were ever offered a social house, it'd need to be something major for us to refuse. But are there some people who will take the piss? Absolutely. But that's true of everything. Just look at the elite earners and how greedy they are. Go and have a look at the latest revelations by the Ditch about ministers and their mileage claims. Go have a look at Tubridy and RTE. People earning funny money with a greedy yell crying more, more, more. The truth is that the majority of people in emergency accommodation would take any suitable offer of housing in a heartbeat. But there were only 25,000 odd social housing offers made across 2021 and 2022. The houses are just not there because this government is continually failing to build enough social housing. As of November 1st, 2022, there were 57,842 households assessed as being qualified for and in need of social housing. And bear in mind that if you are in receipt of HAP, you know, the payment made to private landlords, you're considered housed by the state. This government is ridiculous when it comes to accurately measuring the real number of homeless people in this country. They only count those in emergency accommodation. They do not count rough sleepers. They don't count those living in their cars. They don't count the estimated 290,000 hidden homeless or couch surfers. No, only those in emergency accommodation. And as I said, you are considered housed by the state even if you are in a precarious private rented accommodation where the landlord can evict you at any time through no fault of your own simply because you're in receipt of HAP. And while I'm on the subject, only 1 in 5 offers of housing have been refused, and there are plenty of legitimate reasons for refusing an offer, like, for example, being offered a 1-bed when you have a child, or being offered an apartment up several flights of stairs when you have mobility issues, or being offered a home too close to a violent ex. Hell, even being offered a home without a garden when you have kids, yeah, that's a valid reason. Kids need gardens. Other legitimate reasons include not wanting to move too far from work, schools, and familial and social supports. And yes, that is a good reason. Most people who get to the top of the housing list are on the lowest rungs of the socio-economic ladder, and their support network helps keep them afloat. Taking that away can be devastating. But Leo Varadkar wants you to think that people like that are greedy and are getting something that you aren't. And that is just not true. A family accepting an offer of housing in a desirable location does not change the fact that it is Fine Gael's, Fianna Fáil's, the Greens and Labour's fault that housing is such a basket case in this country that people who can just about afford to buy are forced to buy further afield than they'd like. Divide and conquer. That's all Leo Varadkar's statements ever are. He wants everyone pointing the finger at everyone else and not at his failure of a government that has seen the homeless figures rise month on month, even when massaged to the hilt to hide the true figures, punching down to hide his own failures because that's all he knows how to do. So what did you make of his comments and his denial of said comments? Is he a good leader who is merely seeing the bigger picture? Or is he a callous figurehead who just doesn't care about the less well-off? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of new content. If you want to support the channel, you can now buy me a coffee, which is greatly appreciated, and a big thank you to those that already have. You can also follow me on Twitter for my real-time reactions. Until next time, slán go fóill.